There's a special kind of image that changes once you know what came next. A smiling hiker on a forest trail. A man in a small boat moving toward a forbidden shore. Tourists standing inside a steaming volcanic crater. At the moment the picture is taken, nothing in it looks final. But later, the image becomes evidence. This film is built from moments like that. Real people, real dates, real roots. In each case, the story begins with something ordinary, a day hike, a remote crossing, a guided excursion, a mission, a mountain trek. And then, somewhere between confidence and exposure, the route stops being a journey and becomes a search. North Sentinel Island sits in the Andaman Sea, west of the main Andaman chain, surrounded by reefs and protected by Indian law. The island is off-limits not only because outsiders are unwelcome, but because contact threatens the Sentinelese themselves, an indigenous people living in voluntary isolation. Boats are not supposed to land there. Visitors are not supposed to approach. In November 2018, John Allen Chow did anyway. Chow was 26 years old, an American missionary who had prepared for the trip in secret. He paid local fishermen to take him close to the island under cover of darkness. In his diary, he wrote about his intention to reach the people living there. He also recorded the danger clearly enough to understand it. During one attempt, a boy shot an arrow that struck the Bible he was holding against his chest. He still went back. The geography here is deceptively simple. A low tropical island, white surf over coral, dense forest rising just beyond the beach. But simplicity is the illusion. The reef keeps large boats out. The law keeps rescuers away. And the people on shore have a long history of rejecting contact with force. According to the fishermen who took him there, Chow made repeated attempts to approach. On his final trip, he told them to leave him. The next day, from offshore, they reported seeing islanders dragging a body and later burying it on the beach. Indian authorities opened a case, but the body was never recovered. The island remained what it had always been, a place the outside world could look at, but not enter on its own terms. If North Sentinel is a story about crossing a line that was clearly drawn, the next case is more unsettling because the route looked completely normal. Buquete in western Panama is known for mountain air, coffee country, and cloud forest. On April 1, 2014, Chris Kremers in Lisand Fran, two Dutch students in their early 20s, set out on the El Pianista Trail. It was supposed to be a daytime hike. The early images from their camera are the kind of travel photos people take everywhere. Sunlight, viewpoints, relaxed expressions. No sign of distress. Then, the ordinary record stops. That afternoon, the first emergency call attempts were made from their phones. The calls did not connect. More attempts followed over the next days. One phone battery ran out. The other was turned on repeatedly, apparently in search of signal. Later, investigators would see a pattern that still unsettles people who study the case. Someone kept checking for reception long after the hike should have ended, long after the women should have been back in town. The environment matters here. The trail rises through pasture and into cloud forest, then continues beyond the familiar tourist turnaround point into rougher country, drainage lines, steep drop-offs, river crossings, and deep vegetation. In dry weather, the path can feel manageable. In bad judgment or fading light, it can become a trap. Search teams looked for them. Weeks passed. Then a local woman found a blue backpack by a river. Inside were the phones, the camera, money, and other belongings. What came next turned a missing person case into a lasting mystery. The recovered phones showed the failed emergency calls. The camera contained the last normal daytime photos, then a later sequence of nighttime flash images taken in darkness, many of them disorienting. fragmentary and hard to interpret. After that came the human remains found in the area, not complete bodies, but partial remains, enough to confirm that they had not simply vanished from the map, not enough to explain every hour between the cheerful trail photos and the evidence left in the forest. From Panama's wet mountains, the story moves to one of the coldest and most argued over disaster sites in modern outdoor history. In late January 1959, a group of young hikers set out into the northern Ural Mountains in what was then the Soviet Union. They were experienced. This was not a casual excursion. Their destination lay near the shoulder of Holatsiako, a barren slope above the tree line. The plan was straightforward: complete the route, then send word back. That message never came. The first real warning was absence. Families and friends waited past the expected date. Eventually, search teams were sent out. When they reached the campsite, they found a tent on an exposed slope, partly collapsed and cut open from the inside. Boots, clothing, and essential gear had been left behind. Tracks led away into the snow. The layout of the scene is what gives Dyatlov Pass its lasting power. It was not a single wreck, it was a trail of decisions under pressure. 2 bodies were found near a cedar tree at the forest edge, close to the remains of a fire. Others were found between the tree line and the tent, as if trying to return uphill. The last 4 were discovered later, under deep snow in a ravine. Some died of hypothermia, others had severe internal injuries. Over the years, the case attracted almost every theory imaginable, but stripped of mythology, the core facts remain stark enough on their own. A group abandoned shelter in extreme conditions. They left with inadequate clothing. They scattered across a winter slope and forest in the dark. Whatever forced them out, whether snow instability, wind-driven panic, or a combination of natural factors, the environment finished the job. Their last photographs show preparation, movement, camp life, wind-blown terrain, nothing supernatural, just a remote slope, deep cold, and the terrible speed at which exposure can turn confusion into death. If Dyatlov is frozen distance, the Darien Gap is the opposite: heat, mud, water, insects, thick vegetation, and the constant feeling that there is no straight line through it. The Darien Gap breaks the Pan-American route between Colombia and Panama. It is not one trail, but a region of jungle, rivers, marsh, ridges, and shifting human danger. Smugglers move through it. Armed groups have operated in it. Rescue is uncertain, even when people know where to start looking. In 2013, Swedish traveler Jan Philip Branisch set out toward this zone, reportedly determined to cross from Colombia towards Panama. His last known communication was not dramatic. That is what makes it powerful. A final email to his wife, a final travel update. The tone suggested movement, progress, proximity to the next stage, but the map was lying to him. In places like the Darien, distance is not measured in miles alone. It is measured in river conditions, local control, path knowledge, and whether anyone around you wants you to keep moving at all. Then, he disappeared. Searches produced no quick resolution. Time passed. His case became one more unanswered crossing in a landscape built to erase traces. Then, 2 years later, the answer emerged from the conflict inside the region itself. Members of the FARC admitted they had killed him after mistaking him for a foreign spy. His remains were eventually identified. The mystery ended, but not with rescue and not with survival. In the Darien, even certainty arrived late, carried out of the jungle long after the journey was over. The final case is different from the others because the catastrophe did not unfold over days or weeks. It happened in minutes, in front of cameras, in a place people were still actively being taken to as tourists. Wakari, also known as White Island, lies off New Zealand's North Island, an active volcanic island with a crater that vented steam, gas, and heat from the Earth. It was marketed as a rare chance to walk inside an active marine volcano. Visitors arrived by boat and helicopter. Hard hats were a part of the experience. So was the feeling that danger had already been professionally managed. On December 9, 2019, 47 people were on the island when the volcano erupted. A webcam captured people inside the crater area shortly before the blast. The image is chilling because of how calm it looks. Small human figures against pale mineral ground, steam drifting upward, no visual warning that means anything to an ordinary tourist. Then, the eruption sent ash, gas, and superheated material across the island. This was not a disappearance in the classic sense. It was something more brutal. People were trapped in an environment that turned lethal almost instantly. Some survivors were rescued by boat crews and pilots who moved toward the danger instead of away from it. Others died on the island or later from their injuries. Recovery teams then faced a second calculation: how to retrieve the dead from a volcano that could erupt again. Even after the blast, the island remained dangerous ground. These 5 stories are separated by ocean, language, climate, and motive. One person was trying to reach an isolated people. 2 were on a tropical hike. 9 were crossing a winter mountain route. 1 was moving through a contested jungle frontier. Dozens were on a commercial volcano tour. Yet the pattern repeats so consistently that it becomes hard to ignore. In each case, the place offered a version of itself that looked survivable: a beach, a trail, a slope, a river corridor, a guided walkway through steam. But the visible surface of a place is not the same as its actual terms. On North Sentinel, the barrier was cultural, legal, and physical all at once. In Panama, the trail beyond the familiar viewpoint became a maze of weather, terrain, and isolation. At Dyatlov Pass, a camp on an exposed slope turned one decision into a chain of irreversible losses. In the Darien, the map concealed armed control in the absence of any reliable safety net. On White Island, organized tourism created the impression that proximity and acceptable risk were the same thing. The final image in stories like these is rarely the most dramatic one. Sometimes it is just the last normal image: a man still rowing, hikers still smiling, tourists still standing in the crater. That may be why these cases endure. They do not begin in obvious catastrophe. They begin in ordinary confidence, and by the time the place reveals what it really is, the camera is still on, but the route back is gone.